My dear brothers and sisters, very briefly before we conclude, there are 4 levels of how we react to a wrong that is done to us. One of these levels is haram. The second level is permissible. The third level is good. And the fourth level is encouraged. I repeat, there are 4 ways to respond when somebody does something wrong to us. If somebody is mean, sarcastic, nasty, belittling, if somebody takes our right and property, there are 4 ways to respond. The first way is haram for us to respond. Unfortunately, that is all too common. And that is that we hold a grudge and we reply to the evil with even worse evil. If somebody made one sarcastic comment, for the rest of our lives we will make sarcastic comments about him. If somebody said one thing about us, for 10 years we will say bad things about him. And in this case, my dear brothers and sisters, what has happened is, you have changed from the one who has been wronged to the one who is doing the wrong. Because Allah only allows you to take back the same as has been taken from you. But unfortunately, most of us, we go beyond. And if somebody says one thing, we will say 10 things back. If somebody says something mildly sarcastic, we will be extremely nasty and mean. And we think this is our right. And the minute we do this, realize that the table has turned now. And you are the zalim. And you are the tyrant. And the one that has initially made fun of you, now he is the one, you owe him your good deeds. So we have to be very careful about that. The second level, which is halal and permissible, but it is not encouraged, is to respond to evil with the same amount of evil. So if somebody is sarcastic to us, it is halal in his face, not behind his back. It is halal that we are sarcastic back at him. It's not encouraged, but Allah knows our sharia, our nature. Allah knows that not all of us can forgive. So Allah says, if somebody does wrong, you have the right to do the exact same wrong back to him. Al-Hasan al-Basri commented on this verse, he said, and how do you know you did the exact same? What if you went more than this? Because in the end of the day, when he makes a sarcastic comment, you're not going to make the same sarcastic comment, are you? You will have to change the joke and have sarcastic comment at him. What if your comment went beyond what he did to you? How do you know on the Day of Judgment? So Al-Hasan al-Basri warned us, he said, how do you know that you went the exact same amount? How can you apply this rule 100% with precision? Who amongst us can do this? Meaning, what was Hasan al-Basri's point? Forgive and move on. That was what his point was. So this is jaiz. And alhamdulillah, we thank Allah that our religion allows us to do this. And this leads to the third point. And that is the third way to respond. And that is to forgive and move on. And this is good. We don't hold a grudge in our hearts. We expect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward us. But at the same time, we don't mend, if you like, a broken relationship. We simply are lukewarm about it. We don't. If we had a good friend, once a bad thing happens, khalas, we say salam in the masjid, but we don't go back to that friendship status. We are good to him in our hearts, but we don't have the same friendship. This is no doubt good. We have forgiven, but we haven't quite forgotten. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encourages this. But the highest level is to forgive and to forget, to move on and to mend, to go back to how the relationship was. This is the highest level. And this is what Allah says, فَمَنْ عَفَى وَأَصْلَحَ. You can forgive, but you don't have the sulh. That's good. But if you forgive and you have the sulh, sulh means you mend, you make it back, you repair. That is the highest level. And this, of course, Allah Azza wa Jal praises in the Qur'an in so many verses. Allah says, وَلَا تَسْتَوِ الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ. That good and evil are not the same. Being good and being nasty are not the same. إِدْفَعْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. When somebody is nasty, return it with good. When somebody is mean, be nice back to him. What will happen? فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. You will find the one who was your worst enemy will become your best friend. وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا ذُو حَظٍّ عَظِيمٍ. Only the people of great patience and only the people of great fortune and reward will be able to get to that level. That is the highest level, the fourth level, and that is to return evil with good. to forgive and forget and repair and mend up, to be the better of the two, to practice what Abu Bakr practiced with his cousin Mistah. After all that Mistah had done, Abu Bakr in fact increased the stipend he would give Mistah. Until the day Abu Bakr died, Mistah got an increased stipend after Mistah had slandered his own cousin and the mother of the believers. This is why Allah called Abu Bakr ulul fadli minkum, the people of dignity and character amongst you. And that is the relationship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to have. Very quickly before I conclude, how does one go about doing this? And much can be said. Two simple points, psychological and Islamic. Two simple points. How does one forgive and forget? First point, psychological. Second point, Islamic. As for the psychological point, nothing to do with religion, human nature. My dear brothers and sisters, realize, the more you hold a grudge, the longer your heart is burning, the longer you feel the pain, the fact of the matter is, the longer you are letting the other person control you and your happiness and your freedom. The longer you hold that pain in your heart, then the longer you are allowing the person who has caused you the pain to win. Because in reality you are a hostage to him and his emotions. Your happiness is kept in check because your heart is suffering grief because of him. So even from a purely psychological standpoint, let go of that grief. Cut off that anger. Get rid of that grudge so that you can enjoy life. Enjoy the positives that this world has to offer you. Even from a psychological perspective, people that have nothing to do with religion, they tell us it is better to be forgiving and cheerful, to turn the other cheek, just to get rid of that grudge. Why? Because when you're holding a grudge, you are depriving yourself. Wallahi, you know this and I know this, that when we hold a grudge, we don't even notice the beautiful air, the nice breeze, the smell of the flowers, our wives and children. We ignore all of this because that grudge is in our heart. We are held hostage to the very person whom we don't want to be hostage to. So even from a psychological standpoint, my dear brothers and sisters, just cut off that grief. Just get rid of it. Have your heart clean and pure so that you can enjoy this world and the next. And then of course from the Islamic perspective, realize that when you give up that pain and that anger, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you much more. It is true that revenge is sweet, but the reward from Allah is sweeter. And this is what we need to realize and believe, my dear brothers and sisters, that Allah says in the Quran, فَمَنْ عَفَى وَأَصْلَحَ فَأَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Whoever forgives and mends, Allah will reward him. Allah says in the Quran, وَأَنْ تَعْفُوا أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. If you forgive, that is closer to piety. Allah says in the Quran, وَإِنْ تَغْفِرُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. If you forgive, then Allah is Ghafur Rahim. And Allah said to Abu Bakr, why don't you forgive him? أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ أَنْ يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. Don't you want Allah to forgive you? My dear brothers and sisters, realize the more you forgive others, the more Allah will forgive you. And that should be our main incentive to keep on forgiving. Because wallahi, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were not to forgive us, what are we going to do? So the more we are forgiving to others, the more Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive us. And I conclude by quoting a beautiful hadith of the Prophet in this regard, narrated in Sahih Muslim, that our Prophet ﷺ said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only increases in honor the servant of His who keeps on forgiving. When you forgive, you are not the weaker, you are the stronger. This is what our Prophet ﷺ said. Allah will only increase you in izzah when you practice ghufran and afu. When you forgive, you are not the weaker party. Wallah, you are the stronger party. And Allah Azza wa Jal will raise your rank and respect and your status in this world before the next. My dear brothers and sisters, let us learn from today onwards to forgive those who wrong us. Even if especially if they're family and friends. Especially if they're parents and siblings and brothers and sisters. Especially if they're sons and daughters. If we're going to hold grudges and they're going to hold grudges, how will any family flourish? Let us forgive and forget.